Now we're going to take a closer look at some examples of vegetation management in Marin's public lands. Fuel reduction, as we said, can be a goal, as in fuel breaks, or it can be a strategy for restoring health and resiliency to a forest. In either case, land managers are striving to maintain or improve habitat quality. So let's kick this off with Michonne Martin talking about Marin County and how it does its work.
This is what it looked like in the understory. You can just see it's just chock full of dead things and brush and broom. And then this is just another example of what that looks like. And then this picture sort of shows the aftermath with a clear line of where we aren't doing it on this side of the road and where we had started it back when we had started on this side of the road. You can see that this is, if both sides looked like this, it would be much safer for firefighters to access through here. It also is much easier for us to maintain. It's much better for the ecosystem and the vegetation community here. So this is just an example of one of those multiple benefit. So here it is. This is all acacia trees that led obviously right up to these homes. We had a number of conversations, driveway conversations, end of the cul-de-sac conversations with these neighbors to talk about what we were going to do in this area, our plans, our project design, and how we were going to restore it in the future. So this is what it looks like when they cut the acacia, put it into piles, we burn the piles. This is what it looks like after, when it becomes just a blank slate. And this is where the restoration plan, where we're prepared for it is. So these next couple of slides are just, again, more project designs with the TAM fire crew. This is up on Terra Linda Ridge, what it looks like before, and really, again, building in that project design of looking at clearing out the understory along this road. Here's another one. This is in Mill Valley again. I don't know if you can see over here, there's a home over here. You can look at this branch right here, and then this is what it looks like. So again, before, after. This huge dead tree, Jason Weber's on this call. Jason tells a funny story that when Jason and I look out on a landscape, I see habitat and he sees like fuel and fire danger and this huge fire cache right next to a fire road. The fire road is right here. So if this tree maybe were out in the middle of our open space, we probably wouldn't have had the same conversation. But I think this is where it's really important in terms of building relationships and coordinating and having a lot of conversations. Is it turns out that this being right next to the road is not safe for firefighter access, obviously, and a lot of what's not safe about this tree is a lot of the smaller branches. And so in the end, after having conversations like the ones I've had with Jason for years, is that we keep the bigger logs and lay them down on the ground here while all the small stuff was able to be removed. And this is a much safer situation. And although it's a different type of habitat, it's still leaving some of this wood, bigger wood on the ground, and it's more safe.
Okay, as we said earlier, all of Marin's public land managers are involved with managing vegetation and wildfire risks. In fact, they're spending millions every year in maintaining vegetation for these goals. This is before Measure C in the MWPA, so that's going to continue. Next up, we're going to see a map where Marin Municipal Water District does most of its work on Mount Tam. This is from their vegetation management plan. And you'll see the network of the pink areas are fuel breaks that are right up against the community in most cases. And then you see these wider areas in yellow. These areas represent work where work is happening to improve resilience, and yet the work does reduce fuels at the same time. So I'm going to go through and kind of take you through fuel breaks. So what we hear a lot about is the shaded fuel break, and so this is a classic view. It's shaded. The point is that you don't need to remove trees necessarily to create fire safety. That when we had frequent fire in previous times, it maintained this open condition in forests. So to create fuel breaks, you saw Michonne give an example there. The crews come through and they limb up the trees and they remove ground fuels. So that's a classic fuel break. Next slide. But not all fuel breaks happen in forests. So the kind of plant community kind of determines what needs to be done. But in wherever it is, whether it's in a forest, a mixed hardwood forest, or in chaparral is on the right. The goal is to maintain, not to scalp everything, is to maintain as much habitat as possible. Next slide. So this is near Throckmorton Fire Station, County Fire Station up on the flanks of Mount Tam on a ridge top. This is chaparral. There, as you can see on the right, there's, maintaining wider separation between shrubs. And all of these kinds of fuel breaks need maintenance, as Max says. Next slide. Here's the same area. We can use equipment in some cases, but most work happens with crews using power tools. And as Max says, these are permanent commitments. They're infrastructure that we have to maintain over time. They're not a one and done thing. So when you open up habitat, there's risk of invasive plants coming in. So all of the agencies under the One TAM umbrella do practice very rigorous monitoring of their project areas to catch invasive species early if they find them. Next slide. And goats are popular. This is a grassland, and it's being maintained as a grassland, and the fuels are reduced. So later in the summer, when the annual grasses dry out, that's an effective fuel break for protection of that community. Next slide. More of the same area. And you can see it's kind of controlled. Next slide, go ahead. Fuel breaks are best near communities, but in some cases they're placed strategically on important ridge tops, usually associated with a road. And so you can see that little brown stripe that's on either side of a road on a ridge top. That's the work of goats to maintain that fuel break there. Next slide. Along roads, maybe not a fuel break proper, but we need access and safe egress, escape sometimes. So that's an opportunity where we can use heavy equipment to, which is more cost efficient and grinds up all of the material into little chips, and is actually can be very sensitive in choosing which plants to remove. Next slide. But there's a lot of work that's going on in Marin's wildlands. This is up on Bolinas Ridge where the tan oak has died under our legacy redwood forests. So we use heavy equipment of various kind to kind of munch the understory. We don't remove everything. We use hand crews in places where it's too steep to move equipment. Next slide. Here's some examples of the upper one is some work that happened this year at Potrero Meadow up on the north slope of Mount Tam, and then you can go ahead. Next slide. This is work near Lake Lagunitas on the shores of Bontempi, where mostly done by equipment. And it really, the goal is for the hand tools, next slide, or the crews are working as if they were doing what fire would have done if we had frequent fire. So also controlling broom. In this case, there's these massive broom invasions that create a significant fuel and a risk to that forest community. And in this case, the best move is just pulling it by hand. It's expensive, but these are key habitats and heavy fuels. Next slide. Another activity that's going on in parklands is, as Max mentioned, if you look at historic quotas, we see invasion of grasslands that are really important plant communities through shrub invasion or Douglas fir invasion. So there's projects to maintain or restore meadow habitat. Next slide. One action is up on Bolinas Ridge where the young firs are removed and pile burned. Next slide. Here's a oak savanna that's being invaded by shrubs, and to maintain that habitat, this is less steep ground, so we can use equipment to do that work. Next. Here's a couple more examples of that. This is up near Bontempi. Next. I guess that was it. So those are just examples of what fuel breaks look like and habitat restoration activities that reduce fuels that are compatible with reducing wildfire risk.